a man who has a Stanley Cup ring with the New York Rangers and the New York Islanders, just like Greg Gilbert, Neil.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to the show. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, guys. I'm good. Thanks. How's everybody?
Very good.
Good. Counting down the days to hockey training. I mean, got a load for him. I guess, start from the very beginning, Neil. Obviously, you were drafted by the New York Islanders, the intro to your hockey career. And then you had the pleasure of working with legends like Bill Torrey and Al Arbor. What kind of influences did you learn from them? And, how did you kind of take that going forward?
Oh, there was a tremendous influence on me because it was the first time, I was working in the NHL, lucky to be working in the NHL because I'd been a minor league player and I just got this opportunity to work for free for Al, basically to go around to games and pre-scout games. I offered to do it. I didn't need to get paid. And then, I just listened and learned and idolized those guys and how they did things and how they talked, what they look for in the players, and just tried to soak it all in. And for those 2 years, the second year I got paid, I got $10,000, so that was a big salary for me. And then after that, I felt like it was, it was really an amazing thing because I was with them in '81 when they beat Minnesota, and then in '82 when they beat Vancouver, and you sort of right away get used to winning and you don't want to not win. It drives you nuts if you don't win. So that was the biggest thing you learn, is that the winning culture only accepts winning.
Being you're around the team, when you think about Mike Bossy and how prolific a goal scorer he was, I think it was 9 consecutive 50-goal seasons. Some of those were over 60. Do you think if it weren't for his debilitating back injuries that he might be the all-time leading goal scorer in the NHL, or close to it at least?
I think it would have been a lot higher. I don't know if he would have beat Gretzky's marks because they're almost, unhuman, like the 92 goals of 1 year and so on. But probably Boss, if he hadn't had that back injury, would have gotten a lot more goals and gotten a lot more time in the league. He like Craig Simpson, who used to play for Edmonton and Pittsburgh. Those guys that want to get goals, they got to get in front of the net. And during that era, you could actually touch people. So they were cross-checking everybody in the back, and that's how your back gets really banged up. And I think that was the same for Mike. But he was just an unbelievable goal scorer.
Neil, I got to ask you, because I told you before, one of the first introductions I had to hockey was Poised for Glory, which was the 89-90 yearbook. And there was a profile of this mid-30s, bright-eyed kid that was named the Rangers GM. What was it like being the GM at that time, especially when they weren't just handing out jobs to young kids like Kyle Dubas or John Chayka?
That's a great question because not many people ask that. And I'll color that in for you. I'd been in Detroit for 7 years. We'd had some really good drafts, and we were getting back from being the dead things, is what they called the Red Wings, the dead things. We had Yzerman and others that were Probert and Koser and these guys. So we were getting to be pretty good. And my name got over to the guys that were at the Garden. And, I interviewed for it, and it took them, I think I interviewed for it in May, and they didn't hire me until the middle of July. Several people turned them down for the job. Scotty Bowman, and I think they talked to Herb Brooks, and I think they talked to a number of higher profile people. Obviously, everybody was higher profile than me, but and then they got around to me, and I think I blew them away with how much I knew about the Rangers and how much I knew about the franchise and the history of the team and that. I'm a real Original Six student, so I love the history of the game. And so then when I got it, I mean, it was unfathomable that I was going to get this job because, you're going to not only get a GM job in the NHL, but New York, the Original Six New York Rangers. So, I flew in, I did my contract with them. It was 135, 145, 155, and 200. That was a 4-year deal that I got. At the time, I was thrilled. I was coming off of making 60 in Detroit as chief scout. And that was just that era. That's what people got paid in that era. So David Dinkins was the mayor when I got there. You know, that wild, wild west it was when he was the mayor. You know, so it was really different there. And I was scared to death. To be honest with you, I was scared to death. I had the imposter syndrome. Do you know what the imposter syndrome is? It's a real thing in psychology. It's when you yourself believe you're an imposter, and sooner or later they're going to find out that you're an imposter because you shouldn't be there. So you're just this. Any one of you guys could think in your own life like I'm just this kid from Don Mills, Ontario, Toronto, like, and all of a sudden I'm the GM of the Rangers. Like, aren't they going to figure this out? That I'm nobody. So that's how you sort of start into it. And then it was scary for me. After the first year, we ended in first place for the first time since 1942. That gave me a lot of confidence, a bit more swagger for myself. Roger Nielsen, that was one of the smartest things I ever did, was hire him at the beginning so that I could learn what to do while he was coaching and you know, he'd coached a number of teams. And so, you know, my nerves quelled after a while, but I got to tell you that, you know, I was there from 35 to 45. It took, you know, I was in my, took till after the cup that you're really confident and not afraid that they might fire you any day and all that crap. In the beginning, the first 3 years, like, I had no idea what to expect. You know, at any moment, you know, around Paramount, people were getting fired and changes were being made. And I was just hoping it wouldn't be me. And luckily it wasn't.
Neil, so you had the President's Trophy in 92, outstanding team, arguably a better team than the 94 team, but that's a different story right now. The disaster that happened in 93, finishing in last place. And then 94, another President's Trophy, a lot of optimism. At what point in that season did you look at that team and go, this team's going to win the cup?
I don't know that I said this team's going to win the cup, but I said that this team has a chance to win the cup. And then, of course, when the buzzer went in Game 7 with Vancouver, I said this team's going to win the cup. But you know, I thought that we should have won the cup in 92. We'll get to that whenever you want to. But you know, we sort of choked there with the long goal by Francis, and we didn't score on the 5-on-3 right before that. I can go through all that in that game, and then Graves gets suspended. But anyway, when we didn't win, then some of the guys, I think Marc, thought, you know, Roger, we'll never get there with Roger. And he sort of, I know he didn't think that we would win with Roger, ultimately win. So when we went into that 92-93 year, you know, there was some locker room problems in the respect that you need as a head coach. And then we got injuries. Mess got hurt that year. Brian Leach near the end of the year broke his ankle. We had a whole rash of stuff go wrong. Everything that could go wrong, I think, did. But I really felt that was a team that could win the cup. As silly as it sounds when you're missing the playoffs, this was not this year's Pittsburgh Penguins that missed the playoffs. You know, they missed the playoffs and they think they're going to be a cup contender next year, which I find hard to believe.
I love that soundbite. I just got to say that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
But, you know, I really believe that we were there. I mean, we had Messier, we had Leach, we had Richter, we had Graves, we had all those components that ended up being the pillars of the Stanley Cup team. And I knew that we needed a coach, though, going into that 93-94, that knew how to handle players that were high-end players and that had handled them before. So the guys that had done that I knew of were Al Arbor. He was coaching the Islanders. Scotty Bowman, he was coaching the Penguins, or was about to coach them, actually, because Bob Johnson was still alive. Because Bob, And then there was Mike Keenan, who had just been fired in Chicago as GM. And I knew he'd won Canada Cups and all this other stuff. So he was one of the targets that I thought we should get to coach the team. And so it ended up, he was the only one available, and we got him.
So obviously, Neil, you got to the top, won it all in '94. Great team, well constructed. I've watched the Road to Victory video several times, and the discussions you had with Keenan about the team construction. How hard was it to try to get back to the top of the mountain, considering all the deals that you made? I mean, the big one with LA in '96 you made, the Zubov Nedved deals. How hard was it to try to get back up to the top?
Well, the league is always changing. And I think one of the things that really hurt us as far as being maybe having a chance to win another cup, the lockout of 94, 95, where we only got half a season in. So that hurt us because we weren't able to do what normal championship teams do. They start the season, they go all over the league as the champs. We only got to play the Eastern Conference, and we only had that second half of the year. We didn't have a good 40-game season that year. I think we squeaked into the playoffs at the end there. We still knocked out Quebec, which was the best team in 94, 95. And then we went on to get swept by Philly and the Legion of Doom and all that stuff. And it was at that point where you saw what our weaknesses were. And also with the changes in the CBA brought free agency. And this is where it really hurt us, because if you think about it, when you went from very, very little free agency, very little, to now, if you're 30 or over, and your contract expires, you're a free agent. You can't be qualified by your team. You can just walk out and go wherever you want. Well, who's going to have the better older players is probably the team that won the championship, right? Because they're not going to be back in those days, it wasn't going to be a team of kids that's going to win the cup. It's going to be solid veterans and so on. So now we lose a ton of players because they come to New York. We had a good team. Immediately Anderson goes to St. Louis. We lost Noonan to St. Louis right away. Mac T wouldn't come back because he was afraid Keenan was still going to be the coach. So he went to Philadelphia. And so we lost those three right away. Well, that's okay. But then, you make other moves. For example, I gave a first-round pick to get Pat Verbeek. He played really well for us. Suddenly, he's a free agent, and he goes to Dallas. And that's another big blow. And then Bukaboom became a free agent, and I had to do everything I could to keep him with the Rangers. I had to match what other people were going to overpay him at. And so, and then so it's difficult to get back up to the top. Then we signed Gretz because really and truly we didn't have a center. Like we had Mess, but we were missing one center. And I said to Colin Campbell, I said, how could we not sign this guy? It's Wayne Gretzky. Like if we can get him, we got to get him. I think he was afraid of having Mess and Gretz on the team that he's trying to coach. And, how do you set up a system and everything when those two guys together are there? So it was tough. We had that, as you guys well remember, we had that really good run in 97 back to the Final Four. And, you try to stay there. I regret, there's really only one trade that I regret, unless you can remind me of another one that I should regret. But that is that's the Matthias Nordstrom trade.
Ray Ferraro,
Perrier and Ray Ferraro for Yuri Curry and Shane Churla and Marty McSorley. Now, let me tell you how that happened. We're in the playoffs in 96, and Kevin Lowe and Mess both came to me and said, we're not tough enough. We're not tough enough. We got to get Marty. You got to get Marty. They both were saying that. So I'm like, okay. And then I had a chance to get Curry, thinking Curry's a great two-way player. At that point in his career, he was no longer the 60 goal scorer, but he was the Corey Perry or something, of that day. Corey Perry won MVP, and now he's okay playing on the fourth line, which is not many guys will do that. And Curry was like that. So we bring Curry, and I figured he'd be great for Colin Campbell in the defensive part of it. Marty gives them their toughness that Kevin and Mess said we needed. And I also got Shane Churla thrown in to boot, was really tough. So now we got all the toughness you can ask for, because these guys, we get knocked out in 95 by Philly, and they figure we're going to play Philly again in 96. But guess what? We never do play Philly. We beat Montreal after losing the first two home games. And then we get put up against Pittsburgh, and Ken Reggett plays like he's Ken Dryden. And we get knocked out by Pittsburgh that year, and we never did get to play a tough team at all. So I really regret listening to them, which I didn't do very often. I didn't act on what guys said. And I regret Matthias Nordstrom, to lose him, even though Colin Campbell and those guys and the coaches were not playing him, which that year he rarely dressed. And then I lost a guy I really liked that I stole from Keenan, was Ian LaPerriere. I got him for Stefan Matteau. And so Ian LaPerriere was a young, feisty, grinding guy. And I thought, this is great. I love Matteau, but I mean, let's face it, his career is one goal. He played well in the playoffs, but during the regular season, you couldn't find him, So, yeah, to answer your question, you try to stay up there and get up there and be up there. But eventually, all the teams got to go back down and rework it again. And
please like and subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of great hockey content and an entertaining interactive podcast. So check us out and our library of videos.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.